This is Allie. Okay, getting ready. This is office hours with Basecamp. And what we do in office hours is speak with outdoor brands to get a little bit of an inside look into their culture, compensation, and help you understand how to stand out if you apply with a brand. So it's a way to get FaceTime and it's a way to get that insider info. It's kind of like a cheat code or a reverse interview. And tonight we have, by super high request, Cotopaxi. We're going to speak with Liz, who is a lead recruiter, and Stefan, who is their COO, and they are going to shed a bunch of light onto the company. And Allie is going to tell you a little bit about how the night will progress.
Yes, welcome everyone. So excited to see all of you and have you all here. So Jen and I are going to kick off the conversation with Liz and Stefan and ask a few of sort of our warm-up questions and kind of get to know Cotopaxi, some of the more general stuff about Cotopaxi. And then we will basically ask you all, or anytime that you feel like it, just go ahead and throw any questions you have in the chat. Jen and I will be monitoring the chat throughout our conversation. And as we sort of see relevant, we will be calling folks up to ask their question on camera. And the reason that we ask you to come on camera is because it is a perfect way to get some FaceTime with our friends here from Cotopaxi. It's a great way to get your name in front of them, your face in front of them, and show off your question asking skills, and then perhaps follow up after the conversation and reference back to your question. So highly recommend that if you do have something to ask, please throw it in the chat. Jen and I will call on you, and then you can come up and ask. And that's pretty much it. Is there anything I'm forgetting, Jenna?
I don't think so, but if you did, we will address it if need be. I think we should start by throwing it over to Liz, and we'd love to just get a brief intro on who you are, what you do for Cotopaxi, and then how long you've been there.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Liz. I am originally from New England, but recently replanted myself in Salt Lake City, Utah, which was the best decision I ever made because it connected me with Cotopaxi. And so I've been the recruiting specialist there for about 8 months now. And really just, spend my days connecting with people and hearing their stories and sharing a little bit about Cotopaxi and our culture and our mission. So yeah, thrilled to be here. I love it.
Stefan, how about you?
Yeah, hi, Stefan Jacob, one of the founders and COO here at Cotopaxi. I apologize in advance. I'm driving through, I'm in my car, first apology, that's not great. And I'm driving through an area with bad reception. So I might be off for just a minute and then I'll be back. Been with the company obviously since the early days. At the core of the brand, you see that on many of our products is the notion to do good, right? We're building this brand around people, both externally through our grant making, through a deep desire of our mission to sustainably alleviate poverty during our lifetime, and internally in terms of finding ways to be a place where no matter who you are and what your background is, career highlight is 5 strategic multi-year pillars is to find ways to build an incredible brand, an incredible business that people genuinely feel is a platform for future success for them and for professional growth. So that's a big part of how we try to structure, our internal processes and policies and obviously, hopefully attract amazing people to the brand that way. And Liz is helping us in a major way. So super excited to be here. Love getting to know all of you and just grateful for the opportunity to chat with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. So Liz, can you just start by telling us, where Cotopaxi is located and about how many people work at the brand currently and where you're headed?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're based out of Salt Lake City, Utah, but we've actually moved into a remote first workplace. So we're currently established in 8 different states, including Utah, Colorado, Idaho, Washington, Oregon, California, and then Tennessee and Georgia. And, we anticipate moving into new areas as well as we continue to grow. Right now, we've got about 200 employees, which includes everyone at our HQ. It includes our retail staff, our distribution center, and our customer service team as well. And in all honesty, I anticipate getting up to probably about 300 by the end of this year alone and upwards of 500 probably in 2023. So definitely growing pretty substantially this year and into the future too.
Awesome. Liz, you mentioned that you were in Salt Lake City and that's how you found your way to Cotopaxi. So I just actually, when you said that, it just set off a little light bulb. Can you tell us really quickly sort of how you came into Cotopaxi and how you made that journey?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, I'm originally from New England, so I actually moved to Utah for another job in the hospitality industry, which is where I got my start in human resources and recruiting. So I spent a number of years working in the hotel industry, which was lots of fun. But once I moved to Utah, I started, familiarizing myself with the outdoor industry in particular, because, I love the outdoors too. And I will tell you, I remember, in my first few weeks in Salt Lake City, I kept seeing those do good masks all over the place. And I was like, oh, wow, that's cool. Do good. Like, I love it. So simple, so sweet, so effective. Right. And as I started looking for new opportunities outside of the hospitality industry and specifically, within the outdoor industry, I came across Cotopaxi, put two and two together, started doing my research and really just got super jazzed, about what the company was doing, what their mission was. And so, I mean, I really feel like I got super lucky. I applied for the recruiting position and, first met with Ted, who's on the call today, who fortunately liked me a little bit and, went through the interview process with Cotopaxi and yeah, I'm super fortunate to be here today.
And we might call Ted up if we feel like there's something we can add, just because Ted is the ship's counselor for Cotopaxi. So he's sort of the head of people and culture, very intimately, aware of what goes on there and maybe able to field some questions. So we might call on him a little bit. But I would love to just dive in and start with compensation at Cotopaxi. Now you have, like you said, like too many roles to go into specifically. But are there any sort of policies that you can tell us about compensation? We've seen that you have been posting salaries more often. Give us a little bit of a lowdown.
Yeah, absolutely. I can start maybe and then send it over to you, Stefan. But, we certainly want to be competitive in the market. And, we've listened to you, our community, to, the states like Colorado and New York and our team as well in moving towards that transparency. So we're excited to be moving that direction and, starting to post those job salaries in our descriptions so that everybody, right off the bat knows, who we're looking for. And they can, tell pretty quickly if they're aligned with the job description in that range that we're given. Yeah, I guess I'll let, Stefan and maybe Ted share some light on that aspect as well.
Yeah, I mean, as a general principle of how we think about compensation, right? We've always, we're not the company that will pay the most money in the market, right? There are the Goldman Sachses and other employers where that's a big part of why you work in these jobs is that you get paid crazy amounts of money. We're not that. That said, we don't believe in paying under market, right? So we've done a lot of work, and that was one of Ted's first, I think, big accomplishments when he came on, is to do an assessment and say, where are we at today? Put a leveling logic in place, benchmark that against external third-party market data. Here locally in Utah at the time, we were still, Utah focused in terms of our employee base, and then make adjustments where we felt and where the data told us, hey, we're below, what is appropriate for a given role, and make those adjustments to sort of be in line with sort of this external, data source. Now, obviously, compensation data is not static at all, especially not in this, current environment. So it's an ever evolving effort. We're just going through another, comp adjustment effort in March to just stay on top of that. And I think we are, consciously, as Liz is saying, listening to what we learn in the calibration process as we have listings open of what's an appropriate range. We have made the decision internally to publish salary ranges for all our positions. A, to be compliant with some of the states that already require it, and B, because we firmly believe that is the right thing to do, right, in terms of leveling the playing field more and equitable opportunity listings. And so, yeah, that's where we're at. We try to be as competitive as we can be. That always meets the reality of, being still a small organization with obviously, also constraints, right? And so it's always this balance of absolutely we don't underpay, we want to be competitive, and at the same time sort of provide that holistic picture of everything that comes with working at Cotopaxi, in addition to just the pure cash comp, right? But all the other benefits that we offer.
Ali, I think you're on mute.
I'm actually not.
Oh,
Yes, if you can't hear me, I think it's because I'm recording. Maybe Jenna, why don't you take the next one out?
sure. You know what? And someone asked my next question, and so I'm going to try to find that. Let me see here. Well, what we're going to ask about is growth. So the question really is like, how do you support your employees in terms of growth? Because that is such a massive part. When we polled our community, they wanted to know about pay first, but a company that provides those opportunities for them is really important. So what does that look like?
Yeah. Stefan, do you want to take that one or do you want me to start?
Yeah, sure. I can kick it off and you chime in, please. And Ted, obviously, if he's on, should chime in too.
Sure.
We agree. We've heard the same thing, right? When we poll our team, like what matters most to you, there's fair, equitable pay. There's obviously the overall, how does it feel to be at this company, right? Overall culture and mutual respect, et cetera. And then there's growth, right? Is there opportunity for me to grow? And I feel, especially this younger, millennial Gen Z, workforce, they care about that, and are very explicit about that. And that's perfectly fine and appropriate. So we need to, as an organization, find ways to embrace that. It's sometimes tricky when you're a small business, right? There is not necessarily the clean trajectory, right? From, let's say, a designer, right? You come in as a junior designer or designer 1, designer 2, designer 3, senior, et cetera. Those positions may not exist, right, in a flat, small organization such as ours. So you need to be a little bit more creative in how to generate that growth, both from a titling perspective as well as just a scope and responsibility. And so we try to find ways to obviously create a picture, have very open conversations with everybody on the team on where they stand and what that trajectory could look like in terms of progression over several years. And then secondly, provide growth opportunities in between these levels, right? Whether it's through cross-functional project management, getting involved beyond sort of the pure realm of responsibility and scope of the role that they're currently in, getting involved in more of these cross-functional opportunities. And that's becoming more and more significant, for us as we scale and grow so rapidly as an organization, that there's naturally more leadership opportunities for folks that way. And then I think we need to pair that, and I think that's an area that we have a lot more investment to make with additional properly structured and formal growth opportunities and training. We've experimented with various forms, bringing in third party for leadership trainings. We have tried to leverage our senior team to do coaching sessions, have one-on-one relationships, sort of big brother, big sister type relationship, and just help leverage the expertise that we have in the team to help pull up junior folks. But it's an area that we're constantly evaluating, especially now, obviously, that we've embraced this hybrid model. How do we codify those sessions? Not all of this can happen in person anymore. How do we create more virtual opportunities for people to continue to learn, continue to grow, and sort of become a better version of themselves while employed at Cotopaxi? So it's something we take very seriously, and one of the key sort of strategic initiatives for us for this year as well to help grow.
Yeah,
Ali.
Oh, sorry. Stefan, I'm going to just jump in real quick and piggyback on your comment. One of the things that we do, just from a philosophy point of view about development, is we put a lot of the responsibility for career planning on each individual employee. We believe that employees should be entrepreneurial about their careers, just as businesses are entrepreneurial about their business. And so a big underpinning of that is the interrelationship between the employee and their manager. And we create a series of structured, cadenced conversations that are tied into our performance review process and our one-on-one process, where we actually ask the employee and the manager to engage in a conversation around, where do you want your career to go? What skills do you want to develop? And how can I help you get there? So it's not a top down, like we don't build career paths. And as Stefan said, we don't have like a designer 1, designer 2, designer 3 with a progression. It's much more entrepreneurial in the sense that, frankly, we're looking for people to show some initiative. And if you want to grow your career and you say, this is where I want to go and I need your help to get there, then we're going to jump in and help you get there.
It's cool that you're transparent about that off the bat, because I'd argue that most companies are actually like that, but they don't say it. And so a lot of folks are kind of waiting on their superior to just have a raise discussion or have a changing of departments discussion or development, when really you should be going to them, because they might be your biggest advocate and in your corner and want to help you, but they're not thinking about that. They don't maybe know what you want. It's like, it's not on their radar all the time. So you bringing that up is, in any company, the best thing that you can do. And if Cotopaxi is saying outrightly, here's how you should be, these are the steps to be taking, you're really setting them up for success. So I think that's.
Yeah, Jenna, just to put a fine point on that, old gray-haired guys like me, we look for folks who show initiative. And that's how you climb up in an organization, is you show initiative and you make things happen. Yeah. And that's the reality of it.
Raise your hand.
All right, I am testing my audio really quick.
You are perfect now. Yes.
Okay, awesome. Apologies for that. So Ted, I love that example, as Jenna said, of how you all are supporting employees. I wanted to invite Michelle to come up and ask her question to see if there are any more ways. So Michelle, go ahead and come up and ask.
Awesome. Thanks, Allie. Hi, my name is Michelle. I love that Cotopaxi has a social impact mission. I mean, I think it's really important in the outdoor recreation space. So I'd love to hear how you are ensuring that your employees feel connected to that social impact mission and your efforts to do good.
Yeah, I can take a first step at that. Great question, Michelle. Nice to meet you. So that was one of the primary points of criticism in the early years of building this brand, is that our impact program, it was very well crafted. It was structurally and from a corporate philanthropy perspective, right, best practice perspective, it was top notch, right, considering the size of the organization. But it felt a little distant, right? There was not this direct buy-in and feeling of every day, okay, how am I, employee in our retail store or in our distribution center, connected to that? And so we recognized that and restructured our impact program accordingly. That's when we launched the Cotopaxi Foundation, to bring more of the ownership over impact in-house, as opposed to only working with third party, and involve our employee base in that. So there are 2 board seats on the foundation, are a rotating employee board seat that are always for a 1-year tenure. People apply and then join the board, and that's been really helpful to sort of have this constant feedback from our employee base over our overarching impact strategy. We then also try to tie the day-to-day work in the respective realms back to how we're impacting, and typically it's through our grant making. For example, in our retail store, our impact team plays back based on the revenue generated in the impacts in our retail stores, plays back how that translates into a number of lives impacted, initiatives supported, et cetera, on a regular weekly and monthly basis. I don't know exact cadence. I think it might be monthly. So that's been super impactful to say okay, with all the work that you guys did over the last 30 days, this is how this translates to some of the impact work that we're doing. So that's been great. Every package that we send out goes out with a handwritten thank you card that's written by a recently resettled refugee here to Utah. Initially, in the early days, it was our team, right? We were writing these cards, and quickly became clear that wouldn't scale. And the idea being that we wanted to humanize that moment of, a customer receiving a package, they open it up. It's the most sort of emotionally charged moment that we have, at least on the D2C side. And we wanted to infuse, impact into that. So that program is run by our customer experience team. And obviously every employee at the distribution center sort of sees and understands, that direct link. So, and then obviously a big part of it is communication, right? Every communication that we have, every all Llamas meeting, that's how we call our all hands meetings. We have an impact update where our director of impact will, provide an update on how are we doing, how are these initiatives, performing. Volunteering is a big part. We have a 10% in the wild time rule where we encourage every employee to spend 10% of their time either being outdoors, right? Testing our products, testing competitors' product, exploring, the great outdoors, or volunteering. And so, yeah, that's a big part of how we try to incorporate and incentivize, service across the organization. So those are some of the ways. I don't think we've, find the holy grail, and I'm constantly learning of how we can do better. And Liz, Ted, please chime in if you have other thoughts here. But I think it absolutely matters, right? It's such a core part of who we are as a brand. And it's something that we look for in all of our candidates, right? Have they demonstrated, right, that they will be brand accretive and that they genuinely care about the mission that we're pursuing together?
Yeah, I'll just jump in, Liz. I want to hear from you too on this, but I just want to jump in with a quick factoid. I'm a real data geek. I mean, we are a very analytical company. And one of the ways we track how people are feeling about our mission is we survey them. And I just pulled up on the screen here. We started using a platform called Office Vibe back in October of 2017. So we've got 5 years worth of longitudinal data here. And over the 5-year period from then until today, our score on ambassadorship, which is when we ask our employees, would you recommend Cotopaxi and its mission? We've been an 8.8 out of 10 for 5 years, and that's a pretty darn good number. So in addition to all the things Stefan mentions, we also use, quantitative analysis to understand how people are feeling. Liz?
Yeah, I mean, I think you both really hit the nail on the head there. Yeah, I guess the only thing I'd add is that it's really the kind of environment and culture that truly embraces like getting out and helping your community and helping your environment. And so it's really inspiring, to be surrounded by people who are, just, so motivated to do that.
Very cool.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Michelle. So this office hours is a little different because we have way more questions than usual, and they're all better than the ones Ali and I were going to ask, and are covering all of those core things. So we're just going to kind of ask the questions. It might take us back and forth a little bit instead of in a logical arc, but I think that's okay. So I'd like to bring Kim up. She had a very good question, and I believe Liz will be the best person to answer this one. So Kim Geiser.
Hi guys, that's me. So thank you for having us here today. It's really exciting to learn about the company and the people, everything. I actually threw out 2 questions about it. My first one, I think this is really interesting with headquarters out in Salt Lake City and remote positions across the country. How do you foster communication and collaboration between the teams across the country?
Yeah, great question. Being in this remote environment, we're certainly, learning every day and evolving our practices. A lot of it is on Zoom for sure. Lots of FaceTime with, different meetings. As Stefan had mentioned, our All Llamas meeting that we have once a month is a really awesome opportunity for all of us to get together in the same place, to not only hear from, Davis and the exec team, but to hear from our impact team, to hear from our finance team, for us to be able to recognize each other, cheer each other on, celebrate birthdays, anniversaries, that kind of thing. So that's something that I've, really look forward to every single month. Additionally, we actually just started doing Cotopaxi retreats as well. So twice a year, a biannual retreat where we'll actually bring people to Utah to have some face-to-face time, whether that be, at HQ in the office or outdoors, in the mountains, or wherever that may be in Salt Lake City. So really making an effort there for sure. I'll, let Ted and Stefan add their 2 cents to this too. But, I've been everywhere from Utah to Denver, I'm currently in New Hampshire and really have never felt disconnected from the team whatsoever. And technology certainly plays a big part in that. But I think just the people making that effort to connect, whether that be one-on-one as a department or again, as an entire team, which really makes a difference.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to add, we have changed our minds 100%. We were adamant in the early years of the business that we wanted every employee to be local, that we wanted everybody to be in the office pretty much every day. We felt strongly that we didn't want silos to emerge, and just didn't believe that you could build a strong culture, values-driven organization remotely. And we were wrong. And we learned that through COVID. We sent everybody home in March, April of last year, as many organizations did, and then started polling our team how they were doing from home in terms of mental health, in terms of time with their family, overall productivity, just how they felt about this like sense of belonging to the organization. And across the board, scores went up. And over 90% of employees felt strongly that they preferred this new way of working than the old way. And so we did follow up 3 months later, and another follow up, and the data corroborated those early findings. And so we made that conscious choice. This is who we are going to be. We're going to be a hybrid remote first company. And it's been quite remarkable to see what that has done in terms of unlocking a talent pool way beyond the what we have access to here in Utah. And so it's been absolutely a net positive. As Liz mentioned, there's no one golden bullet of how to manage a remote team well and how to foster culture and understanding and sense of belonging. So I think it's a multitude of small interventions. There is still a physical component to bring people together at the right, cadence and frequency. There's a lot of technology, and then small interventions every bigger meeting we start typically with a 5-minute or 10-minute breakout in smaller groups where we either share something silly to break down sort of that barrier of connection, or we have one of these coaching and mentoring sessions where more senior members will share, okay, my top 3 learnings for successful one-on-ones, or for interviewing or hiring one-on-one, or whatever it may be. So yeah, it's we're still learning. We're still constantly iterating and listening to the team, what's working and what's not. But it is it's a lot of I think little interventions as opposed to this one golden bullet on how to manage remotely well.
I love that. I think that it speaks volumes to the company to kind of be willing to test and see what works and what doesn't, and iterate from there. And also, be willing to fail, because there's always that potential too when you try something new. And that's always a very sort of real and validating work environment as a human being, to know that you can test and potentially fail and you'll be supported anyway. So very, very cool. And actually shout out to Allie Salt, who is who posted up a comment saying she's a former Cotopaxi employee, and just kind of giving a little testimonial there. So super cool. Thanks for throwing that out in the chat, Allie. And we've had this question. I'm just going to ask it because several people have asked it. So I'm sorry if I'm stealing anyone's time. Hopefully you have another question you can throw in the chat. But what is the reason for remote positions only being available in certain states? And maybe Liz, you can take that one.
Yeah, sure. To make a complex story short, it's just very cumbersome, really, to set ourselves up in different states. In terms of taxes, in terms of, state laws, that kind of thing. And so we're trying to be really intentional about how we continue to grow into these different states, knowing that at our capacity right now, we can only manage so many. So again, as we continue to grow, as we continue to expand, we understand that this is definitely going to be a component, is branching into, new areas, new different states. And so we'll get there, I promise. But yeah, like I said, just want to be really intentional about how we do so, and make sure that we're not, jumping 5 steps ahead before we can really handle it.
Yeah, can I just throw out an add-on to Liz's answer there, which was spot on. It's, there's 50 HR laws in 50 states. And that's really what it is. It's complexity. It's not that we're saying that there are states that we don't want to do business in. It's just that there are states where we've been easy, it's been easier for us to move into initially. And as we grow our footprint, we establish a presence in a state. And as Liz said, we have to go through all the different legal aspects of registering to do business there. But I just want to make it clear, it's not because we're saying that there's only, there's 44 states we don't want to be in. We want to be everywhere. It's just a very complicated thing.
Okay. Sarah Jane Post, you have a cool question and we would love for you to come ask that.
Hi, I'm Sarah Jane. And I'm a designer. And one thing I noticed about Cotopaxi is that sustainability is a really big part of your business and that you have certain goals. And I was wondering what characteristics you look for in employees in order to represent those values and how we can represent to grow sustainably.
Sure. I'll let you go first, Stefan.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Sustainability matters deeply to us. Many outdoor organizations have environmental sustainability as part of their sort of core, value statement and promise to operate that way. We embrace that. We love that. In our case, we put the emphasis on people and on sort of humanity and the sort of like most dire and direct needs of those living in extreme poverty. But sustainability, and I would add, that incorporates, obviously climate change. It incorporates, our entire value chain and how we operate, where we source our products, the footprint that we leave there. Plays into that, right? So we're very deliberate about that. We, last year achieved, carbon neutrality and are continuously offsetting. First of all, obviously measuring and identifying, the externalities from a carbon emissions perspective that we have as an organization, are offsetting those. We subscribe to Higgs, so basically create full visibility and transparency of all inputs that go into our products and what their, again, externalities are, to be aware, mindful of that, and manage against that. One of our core, product lines is the Del Dia line, which are these super colorful packs that you see. There's a Del Dia pack behind Liz in the background there, and there's a reason why they're so colorful. They look cool, yes, but the bigger reason is that when we started, producing with our partner in the Philippines, they had a huge warehouse, and we asked them, wait, well, what is this? What's in here? And they told us, well, that's just all the leftovers, all the fabric, scraps are left over from bulk production. So we're asking, so what do you do with those? And on a regular basis, they would either, purge it, dump them into a landfill, or burn them. And so that sort of triggered the idea to start the Del Dia line, where we're using these excess fabrics, empower the sewers to become the designer and essentially use up these scraps of fabrics to create these really powerful and colorful packs. And so yeah, sustainability is woven throughout who we are. In terms of like, how do we assess whether a candidate is in line with that? I mean, I think a lot of it is just, have you shown and proven through your career that this matters to you, through the choice of, employers that you've had, through some of our employees have started, their own organization, but I don't think it needs to be this grandiose. I think it can also just be, how do you in your personal life impact your environment, right? I think change starts with each one of us individually, through volunteering, through the choices you make in what you consume, how you consume. And so I think that is already a big indication, right? Whether somebody is genuinely bought into the vision of operating sustainably as an individual, as a human being, and obviously as an organization, right? Where we have a huge opportunity to not only do things the right way ourselves, but then start this movement around, other entrepreneurs, the industry, to operate in a better and more sustainable way. So that's what we're looking for. Has somebody demonstrated that and genuinely is showing the passion that they care about these things?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd add to that, which will maybe answer a few other questions, is that, as part of our application process, we actually create a few unique questions to add to the application so that people can really get a chance to tell us who they are, what they're passionate about, and why they're a great fit at Cotopaxi. So that's also a really great opportunity for you to share some of your experience, some of your passion, and again, what makes you unique and a great fit for the team.
Very cool. I'm going to have Lainey, I'm sorry, Allie, if I'm taking your question over. I'm going to have Lainey come up in a second, but I'm getting some private messages, so I'm going to ask this question. You did a very good job, and I'm super happy to hear about pay transparency from Cotopaxi. This is an excellent way to move. We're going to save everyone time, and we're stoked about that. There's a couple positions right now that do not currently have pay. And my thought is that you are in the process of updating this this policy and getting those salaries out there, but would like to address it because we are getting some messages. So if a Cotopaxi job does not currently have pay, can we expect it to soon?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We actually just had this discussion today, basically. As Stefan mentioned, we, sort of went through our own internal, compensation structuring recently. And so now we're at the point where we feel comfortable and, confident in, being transparent and posting those salary ranges. So something I'm currently working on, and certainly let me know if you have questions about any in particular.
Awesome. I think some people do have a couple of questions about particular roles, and hopefully we'll get them up here, but I'm assuming it's Lainey is how you pronounce it. She has a question that several people wanted answered.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Lonnie. It's okay.
Lonnie, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, so my question is, so I'm a recent college graduate, graduated from University of Montana, degree in marketing and parks management, and just, getting out into the professional world now, which is always a wild time. But yeah, I just found especially in the outdoor industry with finding, a lot of applications requiring like professional years up to like 3 to 5 years of professional experience. So I was just wondering for, Cotopaxi entry-level jobs, what is exactly you look for in entry-level hires, and anything, that you would recommend to add to a resume to, kind of like cover that over, to, make it look good, but, as it is entry level and there's not that many years of professional experience behind me, what's a good way to enter that realm?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great question. So I'm really excited to have a few different entry level positions open this quarter, which is really exciting. And, certainly we do get lots of applications. And so given that, there is some things that you can do to stand out. And even not having, a ton of experience isn't necessarily what we're looking for. We want to see how you can take your skills, your competencies and abilities and apply it to this job. So that's really what we want to see up front, right? Like, don't bury the lead. Take time to adjust your resume to include all of the most applicable, experience, education, again, maybe certifications, skills and competencies, and really like your passions right up front so that we, going through hundreds of resumes aren't sort of like digging through to find that. We can see that right up front and say, okay, this is what this person's all about. Here's what she's passionate about. Here's what she's, studied in school, and here's what she's looking for. And then again, yeah, sort of going back to the application process and those questionnaires, we're really intentional, about what kinds of questions we're asking and try and leave them open-ended so that, again, you get a chance to sort of dive in and say, hey, here's who I am, here's what I'm passionate about, here's what makes me unique, and here's why I want to work for Cotopaxi.
Yeah, I'll add, that's great, Liz, completely agree. I'll add two things. One thing that we look for in this holds true for entry-level positions all the way up to, we're hiring a president right now. Humility. We genuinely look for people who don't take themselves too seriously, who are very good at what they do. We're a high performance environment, yes, but it's sort of these silent overachievers who are such a pleasure to work with, right? Because it's not about their ego, it's not about their agenda, it's not about being the loudest voice in the room and showing how awesome they are. It's about the bigger mission that we have as an organization. And to contribute to that as a team in a collaborative fashion, that's one of the qualities that really, really matter at Cotopaxi, right? Humility and respect. So I think however you can, that's a little harder to do in a resume. I get that, right? But I think some of the opportunities that we give you to tell your story, some of these like little like what makes you unique blurbs, I think those are the touch points that you can leverage and use for that. Don't be the rah, look how awesome I am. That is not what we're looking for at Cotopaxi. You should absolutely talk about your accomplishments, yes, and be confident in them and speak to them. But yeah, humility carries a lot of weight here. The other thing I will say, I think in general, this is not just Cotopaxi, is to really try to think, okay, I'm going to put myself in the shoes of the hiring manager. Let's say it's a social media coordinator role. Given where Cotopaxi is, given who we are, given what I can learn about, what we do well on social media and what we don't, what do I think the organization needs? And is there a way for me to like really put myself in the shoes of that, again, hiring manager, department lead, and can I somehow anticipate that and make suggestions outside in? I get it. You don't have the full inside view, but outside in, put yourselves in the shoes, and then come up with some ideas, just brainstorm and come with those brainstormed ideas into your interview, communicate them in, again, in these little blurbs. I think that also goes a long way because it shows that genuinely you care about the position. You've gone through the effort of, again, internalizing and already anticipating how who you are, given your unique background and skills, can contribute value to the organization, as opposed to us having to tease that out through the interview process.
Mm-hmm. Fabulous advice. I think that's great advice for Cotopaxi. I think that's great advice for any application you're submitting out there in the world. So thank you for that. Before we go any farther, I would like to ask Allison Michna, hopefully I'm saying your last name correctly, to come up, because I think in thinking through bringing humility to work every day also lends itself to her question, and I'll let her go ahead and ask it.
Hi, my name is Allison Michna. I'm in human resources, specifically recruiting and also diversity inclusion. I was curious to see what kind of diversity inclusion initiatives, current or future, that Cotopaxi is working on.
Love that question. Do you guys want to go first?
I'll jump in with
Sure,
this.
Ted.
Yeah, Allison, that's a great question, and it's so let me tell you where we are. We are in the process of hiring a VP for our people operations and inclusion efforts, and Liz has done an amazing job, and we're getting very close. We anticipate hiring that person by the end of March. So we're building the accountability at a very senior level, and that's the first thing. The second thing is, like all of us, the events that took place in Minneapolis with George Floyd was a catalytic event for us. And we had a lot of all hands meetings and a lot of discussions, and frankly, some of them got a little heated about what are we going to do? Because as a company that stands for doing good, our employees pushed hard on the notion of how are we going to do good in this space. So we spent some time thinking about it. We didn't just jump impulsively into a DE&I strategy. And what we did is we retained a consulting firm called Converge, which was we auditioned half a dozen different companies to come in and work with us. Converge spent a lot of time doing data collection, doing interviews, talking to people who were at the risk of feeling marginalized in our company and culture, and put together a strategy for us, which we iterated on. So we've got basically a strategic direction built. We've got an executive targeted to hire who will be accountable for it, and that's where we are. It's a journey with many companies, and we're, as Stefan said, and hopefully I'm being humble about this. It's like we don't have the answer. But we're in the process of working with people who are well known in the field, and putting our money where our mouth is by bringing in an accountable executive who's going to own and drive this forward. So Allison, I hope that answers your good question.
It did. Thank you so much.
Yeah, one of the, maybe just as commentary, right, that was so insightful for me from the work that Converge did for us was, they're the classic dimensions of D&I, right? In terms of, ethnicity, in terms of gender, but it was, and obviously those, we need to focus on gender. We're doing a decent job and have focused on for many years. So over 50% of our board is female, over 54% of our total workforce is female, and our, including our senior leadership team. So feeling pretty good there. We can always do better, but we've done a decent job. Ethnicity, not so much, right? We're a product of where historically, we've been, recruiting from here in Utah, which is a very, white and somewhat, monolithic state. So we need to do better on that front. But then what was most insightful for me was all the other dimensions that they unearthed. One, interestingly, outdoorsiness, right? There is a perception the outdoor industry in general can be somewhat elitist, right? So if you're not the hardcore athlete, do you really belong, right? And in some organizations, maybe it may feel like you don't, right? And so that was really insightful for me to say, what do we celebrate, right? How do we, what do we sort of like put on the pedestal in terms of accomplishments, in terms of, what matters, and so along that dimension, right? And then so I think that was really insightful, and there were many others, right, like that. Obviously, sexual orientation, etc. So for us, I think we're in the, as Ted mentioned, in the early stages of, for ourselves, creating that awareness, like what does it mean to be, what does a diverse Cotopaxi look like in terms of representation? And then in terms of, obviously that's one thing, right? Do you have the numbers? But then also, how does it feel, right? Are we genuinely a place where no matter where you are on any of these dimensions, that Cotopaxi is an amazing place? Is that career highlight truly because you feel like you belong and you can be your true self at work and bring your full self to bear? That's what we need to work on, and that's what we need to figure out. How do we move from where we're at, a good starting point, to becoming absolutely best in class on that? And that is, as Ted was saying, it's a journey.
Absolutely. Jordan Hitchcock has a really great question that sort of goes into maybe a more upbeat area of the business.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I actually put a couple in, so I just wanted to check to see.
Sorry, this keeps happening. Growth success.
Oh, yes. How do you measure growth and success? And that's, in the context of the whole company and then the individual as well. I figure it's probably different in different departments, but I'm curious, and I'm sure other people are.
I'll let you guys go ahead.
Sure. In terms of the company, like how do we assess whether we're successful, right? Somebody else asked the question, what are the other, strategic pillars? I think this is related. One is around building sort of the next iconic outdoor brand and starting a movement, around that. And so that includes all our impact efforts, right? The number of people that we directly influence through our grant making and our various initiatives. This last year, we touched over 1 million lives. So that is one measure of success, is are we delivering on the promise, the core why of who we exist and why we started this brand in the first place? Are we delivering on that from an impact perspective, right? And do we have the numbers to show for that, right? As Ted mentioned, we're very data driven. That absolutely holds true for our impact work. So that's one, big measure of success. Are we delivering on the impact? Are we choosing the right grantees? Are we genuinely in the 3 areas where we're active around, education, livelihoods, and health? Are we putting our dollars to work in a way that we can measurably report back to our stakeholders, our customers, that yes, we have the right impact on the ground and are making progress towards that goal of eliminating poverty during our lifetime? So that's a big measure of success. That's what's driving our aspiration to grow as an organization, right? In terms of reach, in terms of revenue. To the bigger we grow as an organization, the more impact that we can have on the ground, right? That's what funds our impact mechanism, is the fact that we're a profit-driven organization. That was before starting Cotopaxi, worked for a nonprofit organization that was dedicated to the elimination of child labor on the Indonesian archipelago. My wife is half Indonesian. And that was an amazing experience, right? In terms of taking many hundred kids from fishing platforms and factories and human trafficking situations back in their communities and their schools really impactful that way. But the organization was 100% dependent on grants from the ILO and UNICEF. And when those dried up, the entire infrastructure collapsed. So that to this day is informing a lot of our thinking of how we want to like have sustainable impact and why we're so driven by economic success, because that is exactly that, making us independent from cash infusion from the outside at scale and allowing us to deliver, on these impact programs. So that's a big, determinant of success is growth. We are aspiring for growth, but it is for the reason to amplifying the impact that we can have. In terms of individual growth, I don't know, Liz or Ted, you want to speak to that one?
I'll let you jump in, Ted, since I'm going through my first review period right now.
Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the relationship between the manager and their employees is super special, and we put a lot of emphasis on that as one way to measure, are people growing their careers. Again, I go back to, I've spent the last 25 years or so of my life in the people ops space, and we look at data. And so a lot of the data that we look at internally, success for us, it's the mission that Stefan talked about. It's the economic model that allows us to build out the do good work and the foundation that we do. But we also look internally a lot, and we collect a tremendous amount of data from our employees, because we want the employee experience to be, as Stefan used the phrase, a career highlight. And that's actually one of the 6 pillars in our strategy, is to be a career highlight company. So we watch the data and we listen to what people tell us, because success for us not only means fulfilling our mission around the world and being a strong economic engine to do that, but it also means being a place where we really take seriously this notion of people can stay at Cotopaxi for a short time, a medium time, a long time, but we want people to look back and say, those were some of the best years of my life working at that company. And so that's another big success driver for us, is the vibe and the culture.
In terms of an individual employee understanding what a success metric looks like for them, is that also specific to the manager and employee, or is there some sort of overarching system that Cotopaxi has? Like, is there an annual review that everyone participates in?
Yeah, I mean, we start at the top of the house with our six pillars that Stefan mentioned, and just to give you a sense, well, I won't get too deep into them because they're very high level, but they are: lead with mission. It's about the mission. Scale sustainably. That's about sustainability. Dial in the details. That's about operational excellence. Put the customer first. That's because we can't do business without having customers. Do good, which is our social mission, and career highlight. So those are the 6 planks, and we use those 6 planks in our strategy every year, because we believe that having a consistent platform allows people to really understand what it is that we're trying to do. So the details underneath those 6 pillars will change from year to year, but the pillars are always there. And then we cascade down the initiatives, and we use a HRIS platform called Zenefits, which allows us to load in goals. And then we have a performance review process. We actually do it twice a year. We do an end of year review, which we're in the process of doing right now. And then we do a formal mid-year check-in, which takes place in sort of the July-August timeframe. And then in between those, we punctuate with regular one-on-ones to assess how people are doing against their goals. So we like to think that we stay on top of the strategy, the goals that come from the strategy, the expectations for performance for each employee, and have frequent check-ins. So it's a pretty robust system. And Liz is doing a great job, by the way.
Thanks. I think, the only other thing I'll add to that too, which was really cool and exciting for me this year, was to be able to really create my own goals too, my own initiatives for the recruiting department at Cotopaxi. And so that was something, I hadn't really had at a lot of other companies that I've worked for. So I feel like, for me personally, there's a lot more buy-in, there's a lot more motivation to achieve those initiatives. So yeah, just my 2 cents there.
Awesome. Thank you. I love hearing about all the company policies and infrastructure, but I also really love a good anecdote. So I am going to have Alex Carrick, I'm not sure how to say your last name, come up and ask your question. Alex, are you available? If not, I'll ask it for you. Okay, I'm going to jump in. Alex, feel free to interrupt if you're around. Can each of you take a turn to say what your favorite thing is about working at Cotopaxi? And if you're willing, what is your least favorite thing, or what is an area that Cotopaxi could have opportunity for growth?
Do you guys want to go first?
Sure,
I'll lead out that.
I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Ted.
Okay, Ted.
All right, Stefan, go ahead if you got an answer.
Yeah, no worries. So, I'd already mentioned the people. That's what gets me up every morning. The amazing crew that has come together to build this business. Even when things go wrong, right? Like I was just before this in a call with our planning team and our DevOps team, and it's like a big mess. But even in those situations where things go really wrong, there's no other crew that I would want to go to battle with, right? And having been a consultant beforehand, having been in the military beforehand, having been exposed to very different cultural environments, the way we interact with each other, and sort of follow this notion of one of the books that every employee gets when they first start is called Radical Candor by Kim Scott, which some of you may be familiar with. She's a former Google and Apple executive, now executive coach, who wrote this book around how to be a kick-ass manager without losing your humanity. And she basically says there are these two dimensions. One is the care personally axis, and then there's the challenge directly axis. And magic happens when in the upper right-hand quadrant, no surprise there. When you are able to genuinely care for each other as human beings in our entirety, but also don't shy away from having the hard, difficult conversations, right? And in terms of like what is needed, what I need from your department to do my job, what I need you to stop doing or do more of, if you're willing to challenge each other directly, but from this place of love. And that's special. There are just not a lot of organizations that embrace that. And that's what I love about Cotopaxi every single day. And that we're very careful of how do we maintain that as we scale this business, right? Again, in a remote environment, and obviously as our employee count increases, how do we hold on to that? Because it is really special and what I love. In terms of what I'm having a hard time coming up with something that I don't love, which that almost sounds unbelievable, but it is true. I am genuinely struggling to say, oh, this is something that is not great. I mean, I think we've been more reactive than proactive in the first couple of years of the business, and that's normal. Because you are iterating constantly, you're trying to figure things out as new problems pop up, you jump on them. I think that's something that we as an organization holistically need to address. How do we become more forward looking? How do we create just up level, and a lot of this has to do with just capacity, right? Like being able to have the right capacity in place. It is stressful to work at Cotopaxi sometimes, right? Because it's still a small team. We're moving so fast. We're growing so rapidly. And we often have to jump on a problem that pops up where I wish, okay, we should have seen that. We should have anticipated that. We should have hired somebody like Ted 2 years before we did, right? And we wouldn't have had some of the pains on the people side. And so I think it's that, right? This transition between being a super scrappy, responding, iterating from MVP to an actual business, to a little bit more forward-looking, strategic, well-resourced organization. Not that I don't like that, but it's just it's a pain point that we're experiencing that we need to address.
Yeah,
that's a great answer.
Oh, sorry, Alex, go ahead.
Well, I finally got my audio back, so I just wanted to jump in and say thank you for speaking for me, Ali and Stefan. At the risk of sounding too forward, if you're trying to get more proactive, you mentioned capacity. I don't see a capacity planner on your list of openings, but if you are looking for one, I'm your guy.
I like it, Alex.
Great.
That's awesome.
I'll allow that plug.
Alex, I'll take your question, because I would, first and foremost, I would agree with Stefan wholeheartedly. It's the people. But I've worked in like gigantic I mean, I worked at United Airlines and ran talent management. There were 85,000 people there. It's just this massive organization. What I think makes the people special is not only the humility and the adherence to radical candor, but I think the most amazing thing to me, and I will tell you straight up that Cotopaxi is the coolest place I've ever worked, and I've worked in a lot of places, and I mean that sincerely. And the reason I mean it is because the alignment between who we are as a group of employees and our mission as a company is tighter than anything I've ever seen anywhere else. And that makes that everything good spins out of that. Culture spins out of that. Mission spins out of that. Fun spins out of that. So I think that's the thing that I find most special. I think the thing that I find most challenging is as we grow, and we are north of 225 or so employees right now. When I started, we were at 70, and that's in 2 years. It's harder to stay connected to everybody as a company grows, and that's the thing I think that that's one of our big challenges, is how do we stay connected with each other in a really intimate and personal way when we get to be bigger and bigger and have more people.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for me, I mean, similarly, the people, right? And I think every person at Cotopaxi would probably say the same thing, because it's just such a unique, inspiring, and really empowering kind of group to be a part of. Like I mentioned, I didn't come from the outdoor industry, so I certainly had my hurdles, stepping into this role, but never once did I feel like I wasn't supported, that I couldn't ask, a silly question, that I couldn't, bug somebody for some information and details and not just be, welcomed with open arms. So yeah, people first and foremost, which makes, my least favorite thing, that I can't hire everybody, that I have to say no to people, that's tough for me, because I truly love, everybody that walks through the door, everybody, well, virtually, right, that I get to chat with. And, I wish I had infinite positions to give you all.
On that note, sorry, go ahead.
No, just wanted to say thank you.
That was a really great plug, by the way. That was elegantly done. So William has the question that I feel like everyone has, based on, Liz, you can't hire everyone. And apparently he's been talking to Davis, which is pretty cool. But William, if you can come on up and ask your question on behalf of Basecamp, essentially.
Yeah. And actually, that's one thing I love about the company. I see how active Davis is on LinkedIn, and he actually responds to people. And it's awesome. But he's talked about how he's got 800 to 1,000 people interviewing, putting in for every single job. So my question is, other than the obvious stuff of getting your best foot forward, writing the best resume, how can we really cut through that clutter? Because I'm sure not all 800,000 of those applications are necessarily qualified for the positions that they're looking for. How do we help you find us better?
Yeah, great question. I love that. So yeah, really, I mean, obviously some of the jobs are going to be based on certain locations. So, sort of depending on where you are right now, that is a bit of a limiting factor, unfortunately. But, assuming you can break through that barrier, you're either, in one of our states now, or, maybe relocating or something like that. The best thing you can do, as I mentioned, is to really look at the job posting, understand, the different things that we're looking for, but also, as Stefan mentioned, how you can be proactive in that particular position and put that up front, right? As you've mentioned, and Davis has mentioned as well, we do get hundreds of applications for every single position, which, and admittedly, we're not spending more than, a minute on those applications. So if you can put the most important information, the most important attributes right up front for us, that does us a huge favor because we know right away, okay, great, this is what this person can offer. This is some of their experience, their education, but more importantly, their skills, their attributes, their qualities that make them a right fit for this. And then, as I've mentioned before, those questions, really, I love those questions. I really honestly take the time to read every single answer. So if you can utilize that space to, again, really tell us who you are, what makes you unique, and why you're passionate and a good fit for Cotopaxi, that's great.
So are you reading resume? Oh, I don't know who was talking. I'm sorry.
That was Jenna, that was Ted. I just want to add one quick thing.
Sure.
And this is not just Cotopaxi. This is any job you apply for. Apply for the job that you're applying for. And what I mean by that, and Liz said it very, very eloquently, make sure that your skills match the job. Because, honestly, when we're going through and looking at, like we posted for this VP of people position, we had 450 applicants. And to get from 450 to 8 is a fair amount of work. But you know what? It was easy to get through about half of them because half of the people didn't even take the time to apply for that job. They just sent in the resume they had on file with Indeed or whatever the heck it happened to be. And you look at that and you go, no, this person hasn't taken the time to apply for that job. So, just like we're looking for someone special, the way to stand out is to make sure that you fit the specifications of the job that you're applying for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's sort of answers my question.
The only other thing I'll add to that too is, I know it's a hot topic, but cover letters, I always make them optional for people to include, but it's really an awesome way for you to, like, really short and sweet, tell us again, who you are, what you're all about, and, more importantly, why you're the best fit for that job. I know people love them or people hate them. Sometimes I get them and they're like, 10 paragraphs long. So not super lengthy. That's definitely not what you need to do. But if you can be short, sweet, to the point, and again, utilize that space to tell us who you are, great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're looking for those tech skills first. It sounds like you want to know that this person can perform the job that they'll be hired for. And then you're going to look at the cover letter and the additional questions to determine culture fit. Is that sort of the way it goes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. And it's good that it's optional for the cover letter. Totally agree. You should be putting that in, filling in the blanks between your resume and helping someone understand, here's a way in which I showcase that I'm super great at these skills. And then also for this role, I would definitely recommend showing how you bring humility to your life based on what Stefan said. I mean, taking these little elements of office hours and just putting them in your application, that's how you're going to stand out.
Yeah. And I'll just zoom out and give a little bit of cover letter advice here. I think we get really sort of stuck or hung up on this like formal training that we've had potentially around cover letters and, oh my gosh, does it sound formal and blah, blah, blah. But like, I always approach a cover letter as like an email that I'm writing to, somebody I know. So it's very, straightforward, clean, but like doesn't need to be, wordsmith to death, or as long as it's clean and clear. I think that's the point. What value can you bring to the table?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what can you share with me that's not on your resume that is really valuable for me to know, basically.
Yeah. Awesome. This has been a burning question in Basecamp as of late. So Maggie Johnson, would you mind coming up and asking your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you can hear me okay. My service right now isn't spectacular. So I'm wondering if Cotopaxi appreciates or encourages any sort of follow-up after submitting an application.
I love it personally. I mean, I've always been that person, right? I almost immediately will send a thank you note, and I really do take the time to read those and certainly appreciate when they come in, because that's how I can almost sort of differentiate, right? Like, this person really, really cares about working at Cotopaxi. I'm not just like one of 10 other interviews, right? This person wants to work for Cotopaxi. They know and care and remember my name and are thanking me for my time, because I spend a lot of time interviewing, let me tell you. And so I really do appreciate, that nice little thank you note at the end, especially if you can touch on something, that connected us through the interview, so yeah, I love it personally.
How about if it's just after the application and there isn't an interview?
Yeah, that's fine too. Again, like
and
how to send
where
the
to
email?
reach out. Like,
Oh,
if you know what I
yep.
mean.
Yeah, sure. So anybody who applies to Cotopaxi actually automatically gets an email from us saying like, hey, thanks so much, we got your resume. And so you can actually reply right to that. And it will come up on your profile in our system, which is Jazz HR. And so I can right away, I mean, people do it for sure. And again, I just love seeing how excited people are to work for us. So, and it really truly makes my day. So please, by all means.
Awesome.
That's a
the
sweet
one
hack. Cool.
the one only sort of counter argument to that, some people take that to an extreme, and they throw in their application and then they email just guess email addresses, right? They email 5 people in the organization, CEO, COO, CFO, VP of whatever. They reach out to everybody on LinkedIn. That's a little much, right? So I think just like
Agreed.
dialing it, respect the process, but I love the personal, touch, but respect the process at the same time.
Agreed. Yeah, good point, Stefan.
Yeah, very good point. Jess, you also have a wonderful question, so we'll bring you up here as well.
Great, thank you. Hi, everyone, I'm Jess. My question was about those of us applying for a mid-senior level position, maybe if we have like 5+ years of experience, how important it is to have outdoor industry or retailer experience versus functional experience, in the type of role that we're applying for.
That's a good question. Do you guys want me to?
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
I'll start. Jess, it's a great question. And Jess, it's good to see you. And I want to hover on Jess for a moment, because Jess reached out to me on LinkedIn, said, can we talk? We set up a conference and we spent 30 minutes, 45 minutes getting to know each other. I'm stoked that you're here. She loves this company and she keeps putting herself on the radar, and it's going to work, Jess. We're going to make it happen. But it's a great question. And I think the answer is outdoor industry experience is not necessary. Let me just say it that way. I think there's some connection to the outdoors. I think that's important because that's who we are and that's what we stand for as a company. But you know what? We hire people from all walks of life. I mean, Liz came from hospitality. I came from the airline industry. Stefan was a consultant at McKinsey. I mean, we all have different backgrounds, and we've all come together around this love of mission and this love of the outdoors. So, and back to Stefan's earlier comment, and one of the things that we learned in our work with Converge on diversity is that we don't want to be, a bro culture. We don't want to be a hard, we're not, I'm going to use some names here and I don't mean it pejoratively, but we're not Arc'teryx. I worked at Backcountry. I ran HR at backcountry.com for 3 years. We're not Backcountry. We're a different company, and we believe in being inclusive. So I would say, Jess, that love of the outdoors is important, but working in the outdoor industry specifically, not so much.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would wholeheartedly agree. Right, our VP of brand came from Gillette. Zero outdoor experience. When we had our first summer retreat, that was the first time she ever slept in a tent, and she's been amazing, right? And so I would almost say we embrace and viewpoint diversity, and so it might be an advantage, right, to have experience outside of sort of what we already know, if you will. So yeah, definitely not a disadvantage. Functionally, obviously needs to be relevant, right? But in terms of industry specific expertise, and again, there might be some roles, like let's say, a sales rep coordinator who is going to work with only outdoor related like sales reps across the country. Yeah, probably there it's helpful if you've done that before. But there are other roles where that matters much less.
And when you're growing a business, having perspectives from different industries is hugely important because, that's diversity in action.
Mm-hmm. Awesome, thanks.
All right, next I am going to ask Andy, whose question has been sitting in the chat for a while, to come up and ask about the future. Andy, I didn't write down your last name. Are you around? Andy W. Okay, so the question is, where do you see Cotopaxi in 10 years? I'm very curious to hear what the future looks like.
Yeah, I'm happy to start. We genuinely believe, and actually, we recently took a look at the pitch deck that we used when we raised our first round of funding. This was before we had sold a single product, right? We had a PowerPoint where we outlined who we were going to be as a brand and what we would try to accomplish from an impact perspective, from a distribution channel, outlined the general channel strategy. So this was back in 2013. And we recently looked at that. And we're amazed that not much has changed. We're still who we wanted to be back then, both from what the brand stands for, from an impact perspective, and how we go about building this brand. And I think hopefully in 10 years that will still hold true in terms of the core tenets of who we are. At that point, we'll be international. At that point, we'll have a much bigger impact footprint. We'll have bigger name recognition for sure. Hopefully we will have generated a movement of entrepreneurs, of other organizations in the outdoor industry and beyond, to sort of show this new model of capitalism that we believe in, that it's not purely driven by shareholder value, but that there are bigger impact related goals that are deeply ingrained and embedded into our articles of incorporation, that others follow suit and sort of embrace that. And so yeah, that to me is the vision. In terms of what this looks like, how Cotopaxi, are we standalone? Are we part of some bigger brand conglomerate? Who knows, right? We don't really plan for that. Luckily, our investors are not, forcing us to sort of have these conversations. We constantly strive to up level, to become a better version of who we are, a better corporate citizen, a better place for our employees, a better steward of our supply chain every single day. So hopefully 10 years from now, we can look back and say, man, the way we did things in 2022, we're doing them in a much better manner, more sustainable manner today. And have hopefully motivated and inspired others to follow suit and are part of that tribe. And hopefully we've delivered on the notion that, no matter whether you were in our founding team of 5 or you joined us anytime along the way or still with us, we were that platform for you to jump off to tremendous, career growth, either internally or, in your next opportunity. So that's sort of the picture in my mind, right, that I have. It's a little nebulous, but those are the things that will matter in terms of saying this was a success.
Thank you for that. Jenica, you asked numerous questions, all of which were excellent, but I'm going to let you hop on and choose the one that you feel is the most important after hearing everything else.
Hi there. Oh my gosh. Thank you for letting me pose my questions. I did have a couple. I guess my most recent one is you were talking about sending a follow-up note after interviewing, but I would like to know everyone's perspectives on reaching out via LinkedIn to a hiring manager or a recruiter after you've submitted your information. I've researched that before, but what is the best practice with that? Is it acceptable, or should we shy away from that? What's the best approach?
Well, I can say, from my perspective, I certainly don't mind. It's always kind of nice to be able to put a face with the name. And I always really appreciate when people take the time to look at my LinkedIn and make some sort of connection with me and, write that in their message. However, I will also say that I get probably 30 LinkedIn messages a day, so I can't guarantee that I will answer them all. I really do my best to, because I try and, channel Davis, who certainly does a great job with that. But it's definitely something that's, you know, tough to get to every day. So anyways, I do like to see that, but it doesn't maybe necessarily that I'll respond in that form or fashion, at least until I see it.
Yeah, let me add one thing. My role is I'm head of people operations, and so that's HR. And so a lot of people make the assumption that, HR has its finger on the pulse of every job. And somebody will hit me up on LinkedIn and say, hey, Ted, my name is Sam and I'm applying for this job, and I'd really appreciate it if you could connect me with the hiring manager so I can learn more about the position. And I'm like, okay, well, first of all, Liz is the one who knows all the positions, not me. And I don't know every single position that's posted out there. And then this is the other thing. I would emphasize the point that everyone is really, really busy, and unsolicited invitations to sell something, to connect, to have a conversation are pretty awkward. And I make it a practice, in that hypothetical, Sam contacts me and wants to, can you connect me up with the head of marketing? And I'm like, I know the head of marketing really well. He's a good friend of mine, and he doesn't have time to deal with this right now. So, as Stefan said earlier, I mean, we are an open, welcoming company, and I don't want to give the impression that we're not. But I also would ask that, as you think about applying for whether it's Cotopaxi or any other company, Stefan said it nicely, stay within the process, work within the process, talk to the recruiter, don't try to go above the recruiter's head, don't try to find the hiring manager. And, because then frankly, you're a pain in the ass, and that kind of backfires.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would love to invite Caleb Waltz to come up and ask you a question if you're around. I seem to not have luck with.
I am still around. Thank you for selecting the question. How's it going, everyone? Hey, so currently I'm looking to relocate. I'm looking to get new jobs. I currently work in ops and logistics. And I know that sustainability is a huge part of your mission and what you do. Saying that you use, recycled textiles to make your products. It's awesome. It's great to hear. But I'm curious if you have a supply chain and ops department, or if that's something that you outsource, or what that looks like.
Yeah, we do. We have logistics in-house. We have our supply chain factory relationship management that's in-house under our product team. It's an area, as you know, right? The current environment is pretty wild from a macro perspective, particularly on ocean, but also on air. COVID obviously, has complicated things, and so it's an area that we are looking to expand and to build out, both on the logistics side as well as on the supply chain, factory management, sourcing. So yes, it is an area of growth at Cotopaxi, as is operations in general. Back of the house, right? It sort of goes to the comment I made earlier. We're seeing this massive wave of demand hit us, and need to ensure that the back of the house can keep up with that, right? Clean S&OP process, systems, technology. Those are all areas that we're investing pretty heavily in right now.
Awesome to hear.
Thank you. Brandon, you had kind of a cool question if you want to hop on and ask that one. And I owe you an email about a backpack.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. This is Brandon Harrop. I appreciate just listening to your wonderful responses. Thank you so much, Liz, Ted, Stefan. It's just been awesome to hear this conversation. My question was, and I'll expand my question a little bit more than originally what I asked was, what does your creative team structure look like? And also, I would say, what does your marketing team structure look like, and how do they sort of work with each other within Cotopaxi? Is some of that, are a lot of those positions in-house? Are some of those positions outsourced? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and I'm just to clarify that too, a lot of people in Basecamp have that question. They're freelancers. So they're going to be wondering, can I work with Cotopaxi as a freelancer, or do you only work with in-house creatives?
Right.
Yeah. Well, I can say we work with both. Yeah, both in-house and freelancers. In terms of, sort of the makeup of that department, I'm going to pull up my org chart for you, but I don't know, Stefan, if you want to speak to that at a high level first.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So historically, a lot of the sort of capacity has been built in-house because we felt strongly that as a brand, right, we wanted to fully own the brand voice, how we show up in the various touch points and mediums. So a lot of this work has been done in-house. That said, and we're continuing to invest and build on that. That said, we are working with both agencies and freelancers, both in our creative and in our marketing teams. So exactly as Liz said. So yes, we're absolutely not opposed to it. It's already happening. So it's this mix, but I would say some organizations completely outsource this. We don't. We believe in that as a core competency. We have more of that capacity in house, and then supplement with freelance capacity.
Yeah, and I mean, the teams do work pretty cross-functionally with one another, sort of sitting under that same umbrella in the org chart. And, small but mighty teams right now, but growing quickly. So we're excited about that.
Would an op like that show up in your normal job descriptions and on your careers page? Basically, if there is a freelancer role, that's where it would be.
Ooh, that's a good question. We have done that in the past, but not always. So I would say certainly if you are somebody, if you are a freelancer, connect with me, whether that be via LinkedIn or, via email. And that way we can at least, have that connection and share portfolios and that kind of thing with the creative team so that they could certainly reach out, especially if they're looking for, specific help in one of your, strong suits.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
That's super generous, Liz. Knowing that we only have about 4 minutes left, this session just completely flew by. I wanted to ask you all from Cotopaxi, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wanted to highlight, wanted to touch on, anything that we missed that you want to share with everyone who's here? And if not, that's okay too. We covered a lot.
We covered a lot. Let me, Allie, if it's okay, I just want to, Danielle Pyrick just threw a question out there. And I want to address it. She says, as an MBA, I found it hard to break into the outdoor industry. What type of skills and experience do you value when hiring for those roles? I have an MBA. Stefan has an MBA. We hire people with that degree, but we typically, for me, I'll tell you my story real quick. I started out, I went to the University of Virginia, the Darden School, got my MBA there. I really wanted to get into the outdoor industry. It took me a long time to get there. And I found that the way that I was able to do it was to build up some cred, if you will, in the industry by working as a ski patroller for 20 years and guiding canoe trips and all the things I love to do. And that eventually allowed me to come in with a set of MBA level skills and perspectives and say, hey, I've got the business skills and I've got the outdoor skills, and it was a marriage, but it took some persistence. We're not going to hire you just because you got an MBA, but we will hire you if you're the right person for the right job.
Thanks, I really appreciate it.
Liz, any parting words from you, or if you saw a question that intrigued you, please feel free to answer it.
I really just want to say how humbled I am to see so many people here, so many people interested in, connecting with us three, about Cotopaxi. And I really appreciate everybody's questions, everybody's thoughtfulness, around this. And I'm just really humbled to be here. So thank you all for your time and for your, love for Cotopaxi.
Yeah, I think that your reputation speaks for itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, thank you, Jenna and Allie for putting this together. what an amazing forum, thoughtful questions, wonderful, discussion in the audience. And just want to offer up, if there are any questions that we didn't get to, please, let us know. We're happy to answer and follow up in written form.
Thank you. We will connect.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, really appreciated you being here, especially with your big event right after this. So thanks for coming in your tux and upping the level of dress code for office hours to be.
hey, and Jenna, I just want to jump in and say to Jenna and Allie, you guys are building such a cool thing.
Thank you.
And it's been fun to watch. I mean, we've known each other for, gosh, it's been 1.5 years now since you kicked this off.
Yeah.
I for all of you guys on the call, these two ladies are building something super special in the industry. And I would encourage you to stay in touch with them and stay in touch and get your friends to get in touch with them too, because this is rapidly becoming where we go to look for people.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. I think that, like you said, the questions were so thoughtful tonight. Thank you for the community for showing up. And if you had a question we didn't get to, I'm going to save the chat, no worries. And we'll do our best to connect you and make sure your question was heard, because there was a lot of questions that were just fantastic and we didn't have time for them tonight, but they're important. So we want to make sure you get answers. And if you have questions for Allie or I, you can reach us in the community, the Facebook group, if you're not there already. Basecamp, outdoor jobs, and more, or just email us at hello@wearetheoutdoorindustry.com.
Yeah. Thank you all. This was such an amazing experience to learn more about Cotopaxi. Obviously amazing leadership from the top down. So very, very cool. And everybody have a wonderful night and we will see you next time.
Thank you guys. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.